As my maid stepped into the room, the ensuing events reshaped my entire understanding of reality. This is an authentic narrative of betrayal. As we prepare to set forth on this journey, I feel it is essential to warn you that the tale that follows explores complex and mature themes. The story delves into the multifaceted nature of relationships, the nuances of familial interactions, and the chaos wrought by betrayal. If these topics stir unease, you might consider discontinuing your engagement. There was a time when I believed my life was a perfect picture. Imagine a lovely home in the suburbs, a loving husband whose affection for me was limitless, and a life that, on the surface, mirrored a story straight out of a fairy tale. We held within our grasp everything we thought we yearned for, a life that ignites envy among friends and fills family with pride. Life possesses a remarkable talent for revealing cracks, even in the shiniest of exteriors. At the tender age of 24, I encountered Daniel. Though he had reached the age of 31, this detail held little significance. He exuded a remarkable confidence, as though he held a vivid understanding of his life's path, and I felt an irresistible pull towards that unwavering assurance. In a charming coffee shop nestled in the bustling heart of downtown, our hands converged upon the same blueberry muffin, a delightful twist of fate bringing us together. Cliché, I know, but in that moment our hands touched, I felt a spark, one of those unmistakable connections. A film of absurd challenges, presenting moments that defy the bounds of reality, and yet, there we were, together for 5 years before finally saying I do. Our bond appeared to unfold effortlessly. We would stay up late, lost in conversations that wove through the depths of meaning and the lightness of everyday banter. The dreams we cherish, the worries we conceal, the perfect sanctuary we imagine, the adventures we yearn to undertake. We dwelled in a world that belonged solely to us, filled with inside jokes, quick glances shared amidst the crowd, and an enveloping sense of ease. On Sunday mornings, cocooned in each other's warmth, he was reflective, thoughtful, and had an extraordinary knack for illuminating my bleakest hours with laughter. Our wedding day unfolded with perfect grace. Though it lacked grandeur, it was entirely adequate. In that instant, it was just the two of us, surrounded by the comforting embrace of our loved ones, pledging ourselves to forever. For a moment, it felt as if eternity had finally come to pass. Exactly the path we aimed to follow, yet as the days unfolded, an imperceptible shift took place. It was not as though everything unfolded all at once. As dawn broke, we stirred from our slumber and encountered a profound understanding. We were strangers to one another, and the tempo was slow and unhurried, almost inconspicuous. A metamorphosis that unveils its essence only when one pauses to genuinely contemplate. Daniel persisted in his affection. I am here. My belief stood resolute. Nevertheless, the fire that once set my soul ablaze started to wane and dim. The passionate embraces dwindled into mere brushes of lips. How bold those late-night conversations became, a brief exchange concerning invoices and shopping lists. We stood together as one cohesive unit. Partners for eternity, in every conceivable interpretation. Still, the intimacy. The exhilarating rush of expectation. At first, it seemed distinct. I pondered that it might simply be the natural progression of matrimony. Who truly lingers in that enchanting honeymoon phase? For all of eternity. Isn't that the case? Life transforms into a tempest of motion. The routine stake has come to an end. And you discover your sanctuary in tranquility. Yet, beneath the surface, I yearned for the way he once looked at me, as if I were the only woman in his universe. In a world steeped in yearning, I discovered a deep desire for the feeling of being wanted. And then Gabriella stepped into our lives. It was an event devoid of any grandiosity. We merely engaged her services as a maid. Daniel had been working extended hours, and I found myself juggling my job alongside the responsibilities of house cleaning. The task loomed large, a daunting challenge that drained our resolve, until a friend stepped in with a timely suggestion. Gabriella expressed that she represented professionalism, thoroughness, and trustworthiness, traits that one would seek in a person welcomed into their home. In her mid-20s, she exuded a beauty that seemed to draw the eye effortlessly, as though it were a gift bestowed upon her by nature itself. Her dark, wavy hair flowed gracefully over her shoulders, and her piercing green eyes appeared to delve into the very soul of anyone bold enough to meet her gaze. However, it was not solely her looks, it was the essence she radiated. She carried herself with an undeniable elegance, radiating assurance yet maintaining a sense of modesty that felt entirely natural. The first time I encountered her, I remember thinking, she merely exists in this moment to facilitate the act of cleaning. Stillness reigns supreme. Moreover, however, that idea struggled to gain traction at first. The ambience radiated an air of professionalism in every detail. She would step inside, fulfill her duties with a serene dedication, and leave with nothing more than a courteous smile and a straightforward, "Have a nice day." Yet, as time passed, casual conversations unfolded, with straightforward questions about my day, appreciating the way I decorated the living room, and sharing a laugh over a playful comment. "So, did you confirm that it posed no danger, then?" Yet, I became conscious of the look she cast in my direction. It wasn't overt, nothing that screamed of impropriety. Instead, it was a quiet awareness, as though she were seeing me through a distinct lens. It had been a considerable while since Daniel had engaged in such an act, and I would be remiss to assert that I was oblivious to it or that I failed to value it in that moment. I brushed it aside. She was simply being polite. I comforted myself with the notion that I was simply conjuring illusions, yet, deep inside, a seed had begun to take hold, and once it does, it becomes challenging to ignore. Looking back, I can't help but wonder if that was the moment when everything started to unravel. Gabriella's presence in our home was the spark that set ablaze a fire I hadn't known was ready to erupt. At first, I convinced myself that Gabriella's was merely refreshing. A new vitality beckons within the home, inviting interaction. An individual who brought a spark of light to the monotony of my everyday life. However, it didn't take long for me to realize that there was a deeper significance at play. It started with a moment of clarity, a recognition of the delicate nuances, the seemingly insignificant aspects that at first glance seemed unimportant. As the door creaked ajar, my pulse raced, a quiet announcement of her presence. There I stood, casting furtive looks at my reflection in the mirror prior to her entrance, my fingers weaving through my hair, adjusting my shirt, all the while persuading myself that it was inconsequential. Yet beneath the surface, I sensed it was something greater, something I wasn't entirely ready to confront. Gabriella had a remarkable talent for making me feel seen, yet she did so with a subtlety that was neither overt nor suggestive. It was a matter of greater complexity, as she remembered. Aspects of my existence, facets that Daniel had either long since ignored or perhaps never genuinely acknowledged, like my fondness for coffee, just a touch of cream, no sugar, or the manner in which I would hum a well-known tune whenever I found myself deep in thought. Little did I know, a day would arrive when I often expressed my unease, bemoaning the relentless throb in my head. It was an inconsequential comment, just a passing thought, yet upon her return, she brought with her a modest tin of peppermint oil. She suggested it could prove helpful. A seemingly simple act, yet it remained etched in my thoughts. Daniel would have never taken a moment to ponder such a notion, and it wasn't solely her memories that captivated me, it was the manner in which she looked at me. Her gaze possessed a depth that was both reverent and steadfast, as though she were genuinely perceiving my essence. It seemed she discerned the elements of my being that had started to recede into the shadows of my own life. Our dialogue commenced with a certain simplicity. She would ask about my day, and I would return the favor with a query regarding hers. Yet, it quickly transformed. Our dialogue transcended the mundane topics of weather and the chores that beckoned for attention. Once her work was done, we would convene at the kitchen table, sipping tea and exchanging laughter as she spun whimsical tales from her childhood, revealing her dreams and frustrations. In those moments, I unearthed a readiness to reveal myself in ways I hadn't known in years. I confided in her about the intricacies of my work, the subtleties of my marriage, and the minor weights that bore down on me, yet felt too trivial to lay upon Daniel's shoulders. Gabriella absorbed every word with a fervor that went beyond simple courtesy. Her involvement was evident, reflecting her sincere curiosity in the conversation unfolding before her. It was a sensation that enveloped me, almost overwhelmingly pleasant, before I could even acknowledge the comforting embrace of that bond. In the delicate dance of our lives, I discovered myself altering my intentions to harmonize with hers, deferring tasks to the twilight hours or arriving home earlier, all to guarantee that our paths would intertwine. I would search for chances to linger in the very places where she worked, pretending to have a need to clean or arrange anything to stay near her. A silent tension hung between us, tangible in the atmosphere, the way our eyes would meet and linger for a heartbeat longer than needed. As we passed each other, our hands would brush lightly, a momentary connection shared between us. My stomach would flutter in a way I had not felt before. When Daniel and I embarked on our relationship, it surpassed the typical confines of dating. It was an experience far more treacherous, one that flirted with the brink of peril. I endeavored to rationalize it, persuading myself that it was simply a matter of admiration. She embodies a vibrant energy, an enchanting spirit, and a fascinating essence. That is the essence of her being. Yet, beneath the surface, I was keenly aware of the intricate web of deception I was crafting within my own thoughts. In her absence, my thoughts frequently wandered to her, contemplating what she could be engaged in. If she was considering me too, I found myself lost in dreams of her, not in any overt way, but in visions where we merely coexisted, our garments woven together, and with each new day, the attraction I felt for her became ever more challenging to ignore. As dusk settled, Daniel found himself immersed in work long after the sun had dipped below the horizon. It was a familiar occurrence. His vocation often pulled him from the warmth of the dinner table. In the quiet embrace of my home, I found myself alone when Gabriella arrived for her usual shift, but that evening, an undeniable air of change lingered around us. We found ourselves comfortably ensconced in the living room. After she finished her cleaning, the conversation started in a comfortable, familiar way, as it usually did, but soon veered into uncharted territory. She unveiled the intricacies of a former relationship, recounting the treachery from an individual she had once placed her trust in. The anguish in her voice was unmistakable, and an involuntary desire to soothe her welled up inside me, unrestrained. As I reached out, our skin brushed together in a brief encounter that sparked with electricity. A surge of energy coursed through my being. I managed to grasp it. In her eyes, she felt it too. I stood resolute. She did not either. Instead, I found myself confiding my thoughts to her. I had not yet faced the reality of my own isolation. Even with my affection for Daniel, a profound feeling of disconnection wrapped around me. How I longed for that sensation, the sensation of being craved, of being cherished. Gabriella held her silence at first, her eyes locked onto mine, brimming with a soft comprehension, until she finally spoke in a whisper. "You deserve to feel wanted." My heart pounded fiercely in my chest. I recognized the necessity of creating some space between us. I aimed to establish a separation, yet I discovered that I was powerless to achieve it. I found myself unable to do so. That night, her ability to stir my emotions possessed an intoxicating quality. No tangible event took place. However, a significantly more dangerous chapter had begun. A delicate boundary had been shattered in a heartbeat. The threshold has been breached, and retreat is no longer an option. As Thursday evening descended, the world appeared to hold its breath, enveloped in the soft caress of twilight. The memory endures, as Thursdays were defined by Daniel's prolonged meetings, casting the house into an unfamiliar void of solitude. The heavens above were heavy, laden with foreboding dark clouds that hinted at the approaching storm. When Gabriella finally made her entrance, the tempest had already passed, leaving a world soaked and shimmering in its wake. The rhythmic drumming of rain against the windows shattered the silence that surrounded us. Her extended presence that evening caught me off guard. She frequently finished her duties, departing with haste and leaving me to my contemplations. Nevertheless, a palpable change hung in the atmosphere. The atmosphere hung thick, burdened not just by the dampness but by an elusive heaviness that seemed to permeate the very air, a silence brimming with significance. The lights danced briefly, flickering in a hesitant rhythm, before surrendering to a dim, uncertain glow. Finally, yielding completely, the whole house was bathed in a gentle, subdued light emanating from the streetlights. Outside, it ought to have felt unsettling, yet it didn't. Rather, it felt personal, as if the universe had shrunk to include only the two of us. The kitchen glowed softly, bathed in the warm flicker of a candle I had taken from the drawer. Gabriella sat opposite me, her features illuminated by the soft golden light, accentuating her allure. Magnificent, transcending simple aesthetics. She looked intently. Truly moving, our dialogue meandered through the void, yet it awakened a profound sorrow within my soul. The weather had shown itself to be astonishingly capricious. The power company appeared to possess an uncanny ability to extend outages, while beneath it all, a palpable tension quietly brewed. Still, neither of us had the courage to confront the tension that crackled in the air, its hold growing stronger with every passing moment. And then, it revealed itself. As our hands brushed against one another in pursuit of the same mug, it was a fleeting moment of purity, or so it ought to have been. In that fleeting moment when our skin touched, it felt as though time itself had paused, suspended in a delicate balance. It was too slow, I refrained from withdrawing my hand. Neither did she. Our eyes met, and for a brief instant, we remained suspended in that quietude, shrouded in a tranquility that embodies the very spirit of winter's hold. Yet, a tempest of flames surged within me. I finally withdrew my heart, its cadence pounding so intensely that I was convinced she could perceive it. I tried to dismiss it with a jest, to weave a clever remark about our awkwardness, but the words caught in my throat. Gabriella chose to hold her tongue. Her gaze met mine, a captivating mixture of tenderness and fervor. Within that gaze, I discerned everything I had been striving to ignore. A deep desire, an understanding, an intense craving. The confines of the space pressed in around me, my skin tingling with an unsettling tightness. I compelled myself to stand, to retreat and forge a divide between us, yet when our eyes met again, I found myself anchored in position. She did not halt. She crept nearer, presenting me with every chance to stop her approach, yet I chose to remain motionless. As her lips brushed against mine, disbelief washed over me, and in that fleeting moment everything else faded away. It revealed itself with a deliberate rhythm, calm and purposeful. It seemed we were savoring a hidden truth that had remained cloaked in darkness for an eternity. Her lips held a gentle softness, a warmth that hung in the atmosphere. The essence of her ignited a rush within me. In the depths of my existence, I had never encountered the exquisite thrill of kissing a woman. It had never crossed my mind until now. In that moment, all else dissolved into mere triviality. What truly mattered was, indeed, correct. In that instant, I became profoundly conscious of the vivid energy surging within me as I at last pulled away. Breathless, I felt my heart race beneath my skin. With a shiver of anticipation, I locked my eyes onto her. A whirlwind of emotions churns within me. I find myself unable to accomplish that task. I whispered my thoughts. Gently articulated, yet as I voiced those sentiments, I recognized them as fabrications, for my body persistently inclined toward wards. Her presence stirred every fiber of my being into a tempest of turmoil. Let it go. Moreover, Gabriella chose not to pursue the matter any further. She sat still, her mind adrift in contemplation. Her eyes searched for my own. For quite some time, I have longed to undertake that venture, she revealed softly, her tone steady, yet an unexpected delicacy lingered in her words, prompting me to pause, reluctant to overstep. I longed to maintain the fragile equilibrium of everything. Her truth hit me harder than the kiss ever could. Had this not been simply a fleeting obsession for her? A sensation washed over her, instilling a fear in memory that surpassed all else. I felt an undeniable urge to convey that our actions had traversed an unvoiced boundary, a misstep that hung in the air between us. We found ourselves unable to uncross. Yet the words slipped through my fingers, for deep within, I felt that it was no simple error that night after she left. In the stillness of the night, I became ensnared in a daydream, each instant unfolding with clarity, the memory of her lips on mine echoing in my mind, the soft caress of her hand upon my skin, radiating a tender warmth. The way my heart raced was truly extraordinary. Years had slipped by since that fateful event unfolded. I comforted myself with the thought that it was just a transient slip, a brief instance of weakness sparked by isolation and the gentle light of a dancing flame. Nevertheless, in spite of my attempts to convince myself, I knew within that it was a deception. To be completely candid, guilt felt like an alien notion to me. Not quite as I had imagined it. What I encountered was an ordeal of far greater danger. The thrill of expectation hangs in the air. That was the heart of the matter. When you surrender to the temptation of the forbidden, permitting yourself to feel emotions that have long been hidden, the memory becomes unforgettable. It endures, it grows. And no matter how frequently you implore yourself to stop, there exists a fragment of your being that defies the idea of relinquishing control. In the wake of that night, I made a solemn promise to myself that I would ensure such an event would never happen again. I convinced myself it was simply a mistake, a fleeting lapse in judgment. Still, in spite of my tireless attempts to expel Gabriella from my mind, she remained, haunting every quiet moment, filling every emptiness that enveloped me. Daniel found himself alone, cast aside. She paused, ensnared by the instant. I thought that avoiding her would make everything easier. I took the time to remain outside for a moment, acutely conscious of the situation at hand. She would remain at the house while I busied myself with errands or pretended to have more work to tend to. As I crossed that threshold, the faintest trace of her fragrance hung in the air, and in that moment, my resolve crumbled. It surpassed the tangible. It was the irresistible force that enchanted the spirit. An unseen connection tethered us, deepening with every glance, every accidental brush of skin. Our exchanges have evolved. They were now alive with energy, electric. The simple act of exchanging a piece of cloth or the fleeting touch of shoulders in the corridor kindled a flame, ready to set the evening ablaze. Between us, words held no significance. The heart of the matter resided in the fleeting looks shared, the silences that lingered in the air around them. With that recognition, transcending the limitations of simple expression. It was at that moment that the inaugural secret meeting began, as Daniel set off early for a weekend business trip. I convinced myself that this moment was perfect for untangling my thoughts and embarking on a new beginning. However, the instant Gabriella crossed the threshold, all those lofty ambitions vanished without a trace. I offered her a cup of coffee, masking the underlying tension with a facade of normalcy. Yet, as our fingers grazed during the exchange of the mug, it felt as though time had come to a halt. The atmosphere was thick, nearly suffocating, and in that fleeting moment, it pulled her nearer to me. What started as a delicate kiss in the kitchen quickly unraveled into chaos. We found ourselves wrapped together on the couch, fingers exploring, hearts racing with eager anticipation. It surpassed simple longing. It seemed we were endeavoring to make amends for each ephemeral moment. We pretended not to understand the events that were unfolding in the aftermath. I sat there, breathless, swept away by a torrent of feelings. Gabriella rested her head softly against my shoulder. After what seemed like an endless stretch of time, I finally felt the deep and stirring experience of being truly seen and desired, a sensation that had slipped through my fingers for years. As she left, the house fell back into a profound silence, wrapping itself in an all-consuming stillness. The weight of our choices. Impress me with your eloquence, Daniel. Returned. The next day, blissfully unaware of the betrayal that had transpired in our living room. He pressed his lips to mine. Hello wrapped around me as it always had. A tight knot coiled within the depths of my stomach. The house, I must admit, seems to have undergone a remarkable transformation. Every time I come home, he remarked with a light-hearted laugh, Gabriella's worth every penny. I offered a smile, nodding in agreement, but inside, a tempest was gathering. He remained blissfully oblivious. Oblivious to the fact that the woman he depended on to keep our home in order had contacted me in ways he could never have envisioned. For years, the guilt lingered, but it was not enough to stop the events that were unfolding. The entanglement intensified, and we became bold in our caution. In the hushed moments of Daniel's workday or amidst his errands, a mere touch of the hand while folding laundry morphed into clandestine kisses shared behind closed doors. Whispers of gentle conversation in the hallway transformed into hurried, gasping gatherings within the walls of the guest room. In the midst of the unfolding events, Daniel lingered in a state of blissful ignorance. He continued to be the devoted husband he had always possessed, a quiet sense of contemplation, and kind-hearted. Each time his eyes found me, they brought with them a sense of reassuring familiarity. I felt as though I were a stranger inhabiting my own skin. I genuinely adored him, I really did. However, with Gabriella, everything seemed uniquely different. In a way, she stirred a life force deep within me. Years had slipped by since Daniel last ventured to do so. She revealed pieces of my essence that I had not yet come to terms with missing. Still, the guilt remained, a haunting presence following me in every interaction with Daniel. I caught myself watching him closely, his expression a riddle that led me to wonder if he felt that something was off. Nevertheless, he never did. He entrusted me with his faith. Completely. The very trust served only to intensify the turmoil. I started to reflect. Did I truly embrace it all? Will Daniel remain for an extended period? Had I surpassed the existence we had built side by side? Was love enough when passion and desire had found a new refuge? I found myself devoid of the insights that another held. All I knew was that I stood at the brink, and with each hidden truth, every gentle caress, and every hushed vow, I inched nearer to the void. On that Tuesday evening, Daniel's return was not anticipated for several hours. He noted that he had a meeting scheduled with a client, one that would engage him well into the night. As Gabriella stepped into the room, it felt as though time unfurled itself, presenting an infinite landscape ripe for discovery. Our setting was the living room. We set aside our usual prudence. Her hands lay softly upon my waist. Her lips danced, tracing soft, dangerous kisses along my neck. The rain tapped gently on the windows, a lone tune that wrapped around the space, until an unexpected noise shattered the tranquility. The unmistakable sound of keys jingling as they twist in the lock. In that ephemeral instant, I remained motionless, my heart pounding fiercely within my chest. It overshadowed everything in its vicinity. Gabriella's eyes grew wide with alarm as I swiftly adjusted my hair and straightened my attire. Gabriella hurried through the dimly lit back hallway, the sound of Daniel's voice echoing from the front door. "My dear, I have arrived home sooner than expected." I fought to steady my breath as he rounded the corner, his face lighting up with joy at the sight of me, yet I was conscious of it. I found myself looking at a stranger in my own reflection. Warmth flooded my cheeks. "My shirt hangs a bit askew." "Salutations," he exclaimed, allowing his bag to tumble to the floor by the door, astonished to discover Gabriella's car parked outside. I was under the impression that she had completed her tasks for the day. I conjured a smile. Ah, indeed, she has just taken her leave, and I find myself now easing into the aftermath. He embraced it unreservedly, yet I felt the confines closing in. From that evening onward, a palpable change took place. Even in his silence, I could feel Daniel's eyes on me, examining each of my actions with keen intensity. He started to notice the delicate nuances. The way I seemed absorbed during the conversations we exchange. How I often find myself wandering away in the middle of a sentence, caught in the web of my own musings. On a certain evening, we settled into the couch, captivated by the unfolding story of a film, a cherished delight from our history. Yet, I discovered my presence was lacking in that moment. My mind drifted to far-off lands, interwoven with memories. Gabriella's touch, her voice gently murmuring in my ear. "Are you okay?" Daniel asked, his gaze sharpening slightly. "Indeed, I find myself in good spirits," I replied with urgency. My voice possesses a certain delicacy, nevertheless, I managed to discern it. She observed the fleeting glimmer of uncertainty in his gaze and decided against probing deeper. Nevertheless, the seed had begun to take hold. Then arrived the night of all things. Amidst the chaos of his thoughts, Daniel found himself stepping out for an evening of drinks with friends. That was certainly the impression I had of Gabriella. We arrived at the house, enveloped in our own abandon. His return was not expected for several hours. We discovered ourselves in the bedroom. In the quiet of our bedroom, I heard the front door slowly creak open. With a definitive thump, it shut firmly. A surge of dread enveloped me. With a sense of urgency, Gabriella swiftly collected her things and raced into the nearest bathroom. Just as I was on the verge of preparing myself, the echo of Daniel's footsteps drifted into my awareness. In the hallway, in an instant, the doorknob started to shake with an unsettling fervor. The door was fastened with great care. What might account for the door being secured? He called forth his voice into the ether, calm yet shadowed by uncertainty. The lock resisted my efforts. My hands trembled as I finally swung the door open. Daniel lingered, his eyes carefully mapping the delicate lines of my features. My wild tresses. The blush of shame. I found it impossible to hide my presence. I was simply partaking in a momentary repose. I tripped over my own words, wavering. His eyes darted past me into the room before finding their way back to mine. "Where is Gabriella?" My heart plummeted. She has left us. In the past. Still, the air was thick with the weight of deception. Daniel chose to hold his tongue. At first, he merely regarded me with a steady gaze. In that quietude, I felt the fabric of the world unravel around me, unveil the reality before me. He finally breathed out, his voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "On the edge of collapse, what is taking shape?" The truth bore down on me, an unyielding pressure that tightened around my chest, allowing no space for falsehood. Soft apologies slipped from my lips, barely audible in the stillness surrounding us. "My name is Gabriella. It was never my intention for events to take this course, yet here we are. What comes next?" And yet, it did. Nevertheless, I discovered that I could not bring myself to stop. Daniel flinched as though I had dealt him a blow. His complexion appeared pallid, and his eyes were wide with disbelief. In a moment of profound disbelief, I found myself contemplating, had I ever been truly sufficient? He wrestled with the elusive quest for his own voice. Raw and overflowing with sorrow. I reached out to him, but he flinched away from my hand. As my touch lingered like a flame, he grasped his keys and burst through the door, leaving me in solitude. Inside a home that suddenly felt overwhelmingly expansive, painfully empty, and eerily cold. The walls that once cradled me now towered like a confining cell, and the silence resonated more profoundly than any cry. The house had morphed into an entity beyond recognition. The very essence of the life we had woven together seemed to have been siphoned away, leaving behind an emptiness that echoed in the silence. As it departs, it carries away only murmurs left behind. In the living room, I stood with my eyes locked onto the door, half expecting his return to wander again. In forgiveness, let us act as though none of this ever occurred. However, deep down, I recognized that the likelihood of such an event occurring was slim. I had crossed the thresholds of decorum. I found myself unable to do so. Unleash the tranquility that surrounds me, heavy and suffocating. Every path I traversed brought me to this very moment. Every passing glance, every soft touch, every choice I welcomed. I contemplated the allure of Gabriella's smile and the profound impact it had on my being. In that moment of vivid recollection, I found myself reflecting on Daniel's laughter, the sparkle that danced in his eyes whenever they met mine, and I was drawn to confront the question that lingered in my mind, refusing to fade away. Did it hold value? I have undoubtedly acquired something. Gabriella unveiled a facet of my being that I had yet to discover. In attendance. She kindled a flame within me, awakening a sense of being recognized, cherished, and vividly alive. Still, I reflect on the cost of this thrill, the absence of the man who cherished me unconditionally. The comfort of the life we built together has faded from my grasp. The trust we once shared has gradually faded from my grasp. I have lost the version of myself that I once recognized, the woman who held steadfast to the belief that she would never betray. I find myself questioning if Daniel will ever summon the grace to forgive me. Uncertainty weaves through my thoughts, sowing seeds of doubt about my worthiness for this moment. I find myself pondering whether it was just a momentary lapse or the beginning of a confrontation I have long needed to face. Nonetheless, this is the method I choose to adopt. No, I never envisioned myself as the one to turn against her. Indeed, life possesses a strange ability to lead us into unknown realms, and frequently, the core of your true self remains just out of grasp until you venture into a domain that is eternally unattainable.